One day, an enemy sultan sent Queen Tamar a letter, claiming that all women were weak-minded and demanding she surrender to become his concubine. Her response was so brutal, it's impossible to forget. In the male-dominated medieval world, few women ever held true power. Fewer still wielded it with both grace and ferocity. But Queen Tamar of Georgia was no ordinary ruler. She was a woman who crushed rebellions, defied kings, humiliated sultans, and built an empire that would define Georgia's golden age. When an enemy sultan dared to insult her with a demand to surrender and become his concubine, she didn't just refuse, she obliterated his army and seized his land. This is the story of a queen who ruled as a king, won wars like a general, and shattered every expectation of what a woman could be in the medieval world. Born to rule but never expected to win. Tamar was born into Georgia's powerful Bagrationi dynasty, a royal family that traced its lineage back to none other than King David of Israel. In an age where royal blood was everything, this connection gave her an almost divine right to rule. But power in the medieval world was never simply inherited. It had to be fought for. When Tamar was still a young girl, her father, King George III, made an unprecedented decision. He named her his co-ruler, something unheard of for a woman. It was a move that angered the kingdom's powerful nobles, who believed a woman was unfit to rule. They tolerated her as long as her father was alive. But the moment he died, they turned on her. The nobles tried to control her, demanding she be nothing more than a puppet ruler. But Tamar was no puppet. She refused to be intimidated, exiled her most vocal opponent, and made it clear that she was not just a queen, she was a king. She even took the bold step of officially calling herself King of Kings, the same title used by the mightiest emperors. But Tamar's battle for power had only just begun. With her authority still in question, Tamar's advisors forced her into a political marriage with Prince Uri, a man who looked perfect on paper. He was of royal blood, a skilled warrior, and, according to some sources, exceptionally handsome. But as Tamar would soon learn, good looks were no substitute for character. Uri had two major problems. First, he was a drunk. Second, he was obsessed with power. He wasn't content with being the queen's husband. He wanted to rule. Worse still, rumors circulated that he had no interest in women at all. Tamar, ever the strategist, refused to tolerate him. In an act of bold defiance, she demanded a divorce, a nearly unthinkable request in the deeply religious world of medieval Georgia. But Tamar was not just any queen. With her signature charm and intelligence, she convinced the powerful Georgian church to support her decision. The divorce was granted, and Uri was exiled. But Uri wasn't the type to accept defeat. Twice he tried to reclaim the throne, leading armed rebellions against the woman who had humiliated him. And twice he was crushed. Tamar didn't even bother having him executed. He was so weak that she let him go, knowing he would never be a real threat again. With her disastrous first marriage behind her, Tamar chose a husband on her own terms. David Soslan, a brilliant military leader who was as loyal to her as he was deadly to her enemies. Together, they would take Georgia to new heights of power. While Tamar was consolidating her power, she had been quietly expanding Georgia's influence. Under her rule, the kingdom became one of the most powerful in the region. Its armies undefeated, its economy thriving. This did not go unnoticed. Sultan Suleiman II, ruler of the neighboring Muslim empire, watched Tamar's rise with growing unease. A woman ruling as King of Kings, a Christian monarch expanding her territory. To him, it was an insult. So he did what arrogant men often do when faced with a powerful woman. He underestimated her. Suleiman sent Tamar a letter dripping with condescension. He declared that all women were weak-minded and unfit to rule, and then issued his demand: surrender to him, hand over her kingdom, and become either his wife or his concubine. If she converted to Islam, he would make her his queen. If not, she would serve him in his harem. The insult was so great that one of Tamar's generals, upon reading the letter, immediately struck the messenger, knocking him unconscious. When the messenger recovered and returned to the Sultan, he had one message to deliver. Queen Tamar would not surrender. She would fight. What happened next was one of the most devastating defeats in the Sultan's history. Tamar rallied her forces with one of her legendary speeches and sent her husband David Soslan to lead the charge. The Georgian army utterly crushed the Sultan's troops, driving them from the battlefield and taking over his land. Tamar had turned an insult into an opportunity. Georgia's borders expanded, and her reputation as an unstoppable warrior queen was cemented. Tamar's reign wasn't just about war. She was also a ruler of great wisdom and generosity. She abolished the most brutal forms of torture, forgave debts, and redistributed wealth, ensuring even the poorest in her kingdom prospered. Under her rule, Georgia became one of the most powerful Christian kingdoms of the medieval era. The economy boomed, the arts flourished, and the country experienced a cultural renaissance. One observer noted that during Tamar's reign, the peasants lived like nobles, the nobles like princes, and the princes like kings. She was so beloved that even while she was alive, people began to call her a saint. And indeed, Tamar was canonized, making her one of the few rulers in history to be declared a saint in her own lifetime. But even the greatest rulers cannot escape time. In 1213, Tamar fell suddenly ill while holding court in her summer palace. It is said that one day she was presiding over matters of state as usual. By the next, she was bedridden, never to recover. When she died, her people were devastated. Their warrior queen, their saintly ruler, was gone. But what happened next is one of the greatest mysteries of medieval history. To this day, no one knows where Queen Tamar is buried. Some believe her body was secretly moved to protect it from enemies. Others suspect she was laid to rest in the ancient Gelati monastery. Pilgrims, historians, and treasure hunters have searched for her grave for centuries, but no one has ever found it. Though her physical resting place remains a mystery, her legacy is undeniable. Tamar was more than just a queen. She was a conqueror, a strategist, a reformer, and a legend. She proved that power was not limited by gender, and that a woman could rule not only as a queen but as a king. To this day, Queen Tamar is remembered as Georgia's greatest ruler. Her name is spoken with reverence, her victories studied by historians, and her story told with awe. She was a woman who refused to be controlled, refused to surrender, and refused to be forgotten. And indeed, she never has been.